The year was 1879, and the vast, unforgiving expanse of the Arizona desert held secrets as ancient as its sun-baked earth. It was a land where survival was a daily struggle, and life's pathways were often carved by forces far greater than individual desires. This particular era witnessed a convergence of cultures, a clash of worlds, and within the heart of it all, a story began to unfold that would challenge the very notion of what a marriage could be. It was not a tale of celebrated unions, or one born of shared happiness and abundant joy, but rather a stark depiction of human endurance pushed to its limits. One would search in vain for signs of conventional familial wealth in this arid landscape, yet its people possessed a profound, if sometimes brutal, wisdom born of centuries of hardship. She found simple happiness chasing lizards, listening to elders' stories by fire, and sharing laughter with kin. Her family, though lacking material wealth, was rich in spirit and community bonds, a prosperity she took for granted. The future, in her innocent eyes, held the promise of continued joy within her tribe's familiar embrace, guided by the collective wisdom of generations. However, the fragile peace of her world was brutally shattered by an unforeseen tragedy that swept through her family like a devastating desert storm. The loss, too raw and painful to dwell upon, left her isolated and vulnerable, an orphan thread in her community's intricate tapestry. With grief still clinging to her like dust, the weight of ancient traditions, often dormant but ever present, began to stir. The tribal council, seasoned and respected elders, convened under the vast, indifferent sky. She was no longer just Elara, a girl with dreams, but a pawn in tribal survival's larger game, her individual desires secondary to the collective's perceived needs. The future that stretched before her was not just uncertain. It was a path forged by others, heavy with duty, and devoid of the simple joy she had once known, a stark testament to the harsh realities of life in 1879's challenging Arizona landscape. The elders' wisdom, intended to safeguard, felt like an inescapable cage that a palpable wave of dread washed over Elara, chilling her to the bone as she grappled with the weight of the tribal council's decree. The imposed arrangement, so sudden and final, left her feeling adrift in a sea of uncertainty, her young mind struggling to comprehend a future she had no part in choosing. Every beat of her heart echoed the profound fear that had settled deep within her, a constant reminder of the path now laid out before her. For the Apache, the concept of a thriving, secure future was their truest form of prosperity, of far greater value than individual contentment. Elara absorbed these words, her initial resistance slowly giving way to a reluctant, albeit painful, understanding. She fought against the acceptance, desperately clinging to the notion of a life where personal freedom might lead to happiness. Yet the undeniable truth of her grandmother's words began to seep into her consciousness. The path she now faced was not one she would have ever chosen for herself, nor did it promise immediate joy, but as the intimate discussions unfolded, it became disturbingly clear that it was, indeed, the only inevitable way forward for her people. Enter Kael, an Apache warrior whose very name resonated across the sun-baked mesas and shadowed canyons of the Arizona territory. His reputation preceded him like the desert wind, carrying tales of his prowess in battle and his unwavering dedication to his people. For Kael, the marriage was devoid of personal romance or individual affection. It was a pact, a solemn agreement entered into for the greater good of all. He would fulfill his role with the same unwavering commitment he brought to the battlefield, recognizing that the well-being and security of his tribe depended on his unyielding adherence to this challenging path. His stoic acceptance was a testament to his profound sense of obligation and his relentless dedication to a future where his people could once again experience peace and the simple happiness of thriving on their land. The relentless Arizona sun, a harsh, unyielding orb in the vast, pale sky, cast long, wavering shadows across the ochre earth. Its heat permeated everything, a suffocating blanket that pressed down on the small gathering of the Apache tribe. The air itself seemed to shimmer, thick with dust and the oppressive weight of the moment. This was a ceremony stripped bare to its essence, a testament to duty, community, and the enduring spirit of a people determined to persevere against all odds. Elara stood at the edge of the sacred space, her heart a frantic drumbeat against her ribs, yet her body felt strangely numb, disconnected from the unfolding reality. She was dressed in simple, traditional attire, carefully prepared by the women of the tribe, but she felt no sense of occasion, only an overwhelming sense of being an object, a piece in a larger, predetermined puzzle. Her role was not that of a willing bride embarking on a journey of her own choosing, but rather a participant in a ritual, a silent sacrifice to the continuation of her people. Every gesture, every whispered word from the elders, felt heavy with the weight of tradition, of decisions made long before her birth, decisions that now irrevocably shaped her future. The formality of the proceedings was absolute, a rigid structure against which her personal turmoil felt insignificant, almost irrelevant. Kael, the warrior whose reputation preceded him, stood across from her, his presence imposing, unwavering. He was a pillar of strength, embodying the resilience of their people, and in his posture, there was no hint of hesitation, only an acceptance of his own profound duty. The union, for him, was a matter of tribal stability, a necessary step to ensure the future. His gaze, when it met hers, was not unkind, but devoid of personal connection, reflecting only the gravity of the communal decision. The air was thick with unspoken expectations, with the collective hopes and fears of a tribe facing relentless challenges. Her eyes often lingered on Kael, who remained a formidable, silent presence. He seemed perpetually lost in his own thoughts, a warrior burdened by invisible weights, his gaze often distant, fixed on some unseen horizon beyond the woven walls of their lodge. There was no warmth, no shared laughter, none of the vibrant joy one might associate with the beginnings of a life together. Instead, the air was thick with unspoken words and the quiet anxieties that clung to both of them like the desert's fine sand. Elara spent her days performing the necessary household tasks, her hands busy but her mind adrift. She cleaned and organized, trying to impose a sense of order on a situation that felt inherently chaotic. Yet, even as she arranged their few possessions, the space never truly felt like her own, nor like a shared sanctuary. It lacked the comforting familiarity of her grandmother's lodge, where every corner whispered tales of wisdom and familial connection. Here, the silence spoke only of absence. Kael, for his part, maintained his routines, departing early for his duties with the tribe, returning late, his presence marked more by his stoic silence than any active engagement. Their conversations were minimal, purely functional exchanges about the necessities of tribal life, never venturing into the personal. Each interaction felt like navigating a treacherous path, requiring immense caution to avoid unsettling the fragile, unspoken truce between them. The concept of happiness, a distant dream she sometimes harbored, felt utterly alien in these early days. It was a luxury their circumstances could not afford, overshadowed by duty and survival. Elara often sat by the dying embers of the fire at night, listening to Kael's deep, even breathing from across the lodge, feeling an immense solitude despite his proximity. She wondered about his thoughts, his dreams, if he, too, felt the vast chasm that separated them. The home that should have been a haven, a place of eventual comfort and shared wealth, not of possessions, but of companionship and understanding, felt instead like a desolate landscape. It was a space defined by what was missing, by the emotional distance that stretched between them, wider and more unforgiving than any desert plain. Both were trapped in a new dynamic, a silent dance of caution and duty, each navigating their own private world of thoughts and obligations, hoping, perhaps, for a glimmer of something more, but too wary to reach for it. Their initial steps into this shared existence were tentative, marked by a profound quiet that spoke volumes about the burdens they both carried. The silence that had settled between Elara and Kael since their forced union was a heavy shroud, muffling any hope of connection. Elara had resigned herself to a life of stoic endurance, perceiving Kael solely as the unyielding warrior, an embodiment of the tribal traditions that bound her. His formidable presence, his gaze constantly scanning the distant desert for unseen threats, rarely acknowledged her. Duty defined him in her eyes, never warmth. This long-held perception, however, was about to undergo a subtle, unexpected transformation, akin to a soft tremor beneath the parched Arizona ground. One fading evening, as the communal fire dwindled to glowing embers, casting long, dancing shadows across the camp, Elara sat absorbed in the tedious task of meticulously mending a worn animal hide. Her fingers moved with practiced efficiency, yet her spirit remained heavy. The mundane chore, while vital for the approaching colder nights, only emphasized her profound sense of isolation. She worked in quiet solitude, the low murmur of the surrounding camp offering little solace, sounding distant and remote. Kael, who typically maintained a vigilant, watchful distance, observing and protecting his people from the periphery, approached her. The immense weight of his presence, which had previously felt oppressive and stifling, now began to feel like an unexpected anchor, grounding her in the harsh reality of their existence. He offered no unnecessary words, sought no attention for his help, simply extended his unique skill to alleviate her burden. In that precise moment, the rigid, austere facade of the warrior Kael seemed to crack, revealing a fleeting sliver of the complex man beneath. Elara caught a sudden glimpse of the quiet wisdom etched into his profile as he concentrated on the shared task. This was not merely the cold, unfeeling instrument of tribal tradition she had feared and resented. This was a man burdened by his own immense responsibilities, making his own silent sacrifices for the prosperity and well-being of his people, mirroring her own difficult journey in a way she hadn't anticipated. A fragile sense of connection, almost imperceptible to an outsider, began to take root between them. It was not the effervescent feeling of carefree happiness she might have dreamed of, but a quiet stirring of profound peace within her. The shared silence, once a formidable barrier separating them, now held a nascent, understated comfort. Elara began to understand the profound internal wealth Kael possessed, not in material goods or tribal possessions, but in his unwavering dedication and the heavy burden of leadership he carried for their entire community. While there was no outward display of overt joy, a subtle warmth began to spread within her, an evolving understanding blooming quietly in her heart. She started to comprehend that his very existence, much like her own, was largely defined by duty, by the preservation of their cherished cultural heritage, and by the relentless struggle for tribal survival against overwhelming odds. This modest, unexpected act of shared labor was a delicate seed, carefully planted in the otherwise barren ground of their arranged union. It was the very first hint that perhaps, beneath the crushing layers of tribal law and personal sorrow, a different kind of respect, a quiet form of interdependence, might one day blossom between them, offering a unique path to a deeper, more resilient form of happiness forged through shared resilience and the profound wisdom gained from enduring their harsh realities together. The Arizona desert turned truly hostile. A relentless drought gripped Apache lands, drying streams and shriveling landscapes. Despair mirrored the parched earth. Each sunrise brought only burning sun and more hardship. Water and food scarcity became a suffocating reality, threatening tribal existence. This brutal fight for survival left little room for simple happiness or joy. Beyond natural calamities, settlers grew bolder. Their aggressive demands for land and resources led to daily skirmishes over water holes and incursions. Conflict thickened the air. The tribe, weakened, stood on the brink, their resilience strained. Guided by ancestral wisdom, finding a clear path for their future became paramount. Within this maelstrom, Elara and Kael's reluctant partnership faced its severest test. Their forced union, initially marked by discomfort, became a desperate necessity. Tribe needs overshadowed personal reservations. Community survival hung by a thread. They were compelled to interact, consult, and strategize, driven by immense leadership burden. Personal wealth seemed trivial against their people's well-being. Kael, the stoic warrior, managed dwindling resources, making grim decisions about water and organizing less successful hunting parties. He sought Elara's understanding of medicinal plants, vital for the sick and vulnerable children. Elara, in turn, discovered profound inner strength. She offered comfort and listened to fears, recognizing the deep wisdom and painful advice. True communal wealth, she understood, lay in their unity and endurance. Their interactions, once stiff, softened under pressure. Decisions demanded quick, synchronized action. They increasingly relied on each other's distinct perspectives. Kael's practical nature complemented Elara's quiet observational skills. Bound by urgent circumstance, they navigated a treacherous path. This harsh period forged a peculiar, functional partnership born of shared duty. External adversity subtly began to reforge their somber marriage, hinting at an unforeseen strength from collaboration, a quiet anticipation of future happiness and joy. The relentless pressures of the ongoing drought and the escalating skirmishes with encroaching settlers continued to bear down heavily on the Apache people, their very existence hanging by a thread. It was in these dire circumstances that a new, unexpected common purpose began to forge a fragile connection between Kael and Elara. They saw the youngest members of the tribe, vulnerable and increasingly frail, succumbing to hunger and fear. The innocent eyes of the children, once bright with the joy of play, now mirrored the stark reality of their dwindling resources. This sight, more than any council decree or personal grievance, ignited a shared resolve within them. Without a spoken word, a silent understanding passed between the warrior and his young wife. Kael, with the wisdom of his years and battle-hardened experience, instinctively knew the immediate threats, while Elara, with her innate empathy, understood the deeper emotional toll on the small ones. They began to work in tandem, a partnership born not of affection, but of an urgent necessity. Kael would scout for the most protected areas, securing safe zones where the children could rest without constant threat, while Elara, drawing upon her own youthful resilience, would help distribute meager rations, ensuring the youngest ate first, even if it meant her own hunger persisted. She would gather the smallest, telling them tales of resilience and hope, distracting them from the gnawing emptiness in their stomachs. Kael, observing her quiet strength and the way the children gravitated towards her, found himself silently acknowledging her invaluable contribution. This shared mission, focused entirely on the survival and protection of their future generations, slowly began to chip away at the formidable wall that had stood between them. The dark facade of their forced marriage, once an impenetrable barrier of fear and resentment for Elara and a heavy duty for Kael, began to reveal cracks. He saw not just a wife, but a capable ally, whose compassion for the young was as fierce as his own determination to protect the tribe. Elara, in turn, saw past the formidable warrior to a man burdened by immense responsibility, a man whose quiet actions spoke volumes of his commitment to his people. A subtle, yet undeniable, mutual respect started to blossom between them, a fragile but powerful seed in the harsh desert. Survival became the unexpected bond that tied them together, not through forced proximity, but through shared purpose and collective action. The acts of ensuring the children's safety, finding hidden water sources, or simply offering a comforting presence to the most vulnerable became their joint triumphs. In these small victories, a quiet happiness could be found, a sense of rightness in their collective effort. The true wealth of their partnership was not material, but the profound understanding that grew between them, built on shared hardship and a common goal. This arduous journey, dedicated to preserving life, began to reshape their relationship, turning a desolate landscape into a fertile ground for a new kind of connection. There was no grand declaration, no sudden burst of joy, but a steady, dawning realization of their intertwined fates, now bound by something far more meaningful than tradition alone. Elara, who had once been a young woman consumed by fear and uncertainty, now began to discover an unexpected wellspring of voice and strength within the heart of the Apache community. The initial terror and confusion surrounding her forced union had slowly, almost imperceptibly, given way to a profound sense of purpose. She observed the intricate daily rhythms of tribal life, the unspoken rules, and the collective efforts that ensured survival in the unforgiving desert landscape. Through these observations, and through her own active participation, Elara started to unravel the deeper meaning behind the ancient traditions and the sacrifices that perpetually sustained her culture. It was a realization that transcended her personal plight, connecting her to something far grander and more enduring. Her understanding of the Apache way matured, transforming from a simple awareness into a deep, intuitive comprehension of its complexities. She began to see the wisdom embedded in every custom, in the elders' stories, and in the meticulous ways the tribe managed its resources and protected its lineage. This was not just about survival. It was about the preservation of identity, a legacy that generations had fought to uphold. Elara learned that the true wealth of her people lay not in material possessions, but in their resilience, their communal spirit, and their profound connection to the land and their ancestors. This growing insight brought with it a quiet sense of happiness, a contentment that stemmed from belonging and contributing, rather than from fleeting personal desires. She no longer felt like an outsider looking in, or merely a pawn in a larger game. Instead, Elara embraced her responsibilities, finding a quiet confidence in her actions. Whether tending to the young children, preparing meals, or contributing to the collective defense, her contributions, once hesitant, became deliberate and meaningful. There was a subtle joy in these moments of shared purpose, a feeling of connection that slowly healed the wounds of her initial apprehension. Her journey of acceptance deepened significantly during this period. It wasn't a surrender, but rather an active engagement with her reality, transforming it from a source of fear into a path for self-discovery. Elara's empowerment grew with each passing day, as she recognized the inherent power she possessed to influence her own narrative and contribute to the well-being of her people, even within the confines of a destiny she had not chosen. She was becoming a pillar, not just a participant, in the Apache way of life. The Union, initially a source of Elara's deepest fears, gradually transformed into a compelling story of resilience and profound cultural understanding. Far from merely submitting to her fate, Elara meticulously carved out her own power within the intricate realities of her tribal life. She unearthed an inner strength she had never known existed, a quiet yet potent force that resonated deeply within her. This newfound strength began to ripple outward, subtly inspiring those around her to navigate their own adversities with greater resolve. Her journey was not one of passive endurance, but an active, empowering evolution, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for growth. The initial days were marked by a quiet distance, but the relentless challenges, the harsh desert, the scarcity of resources, and the persistent conflicts with encroaching settlers forged an unexpected bond between Elara and Kael. Their connection wasn't rooted in romantic love, but in a deep, shared respect born from mutual reliance and a common purpose: the survival of their people. Elara started to grasp the profound wisdom embedded within the ancient Apache traditions, recognizing them not as oppressive shackles, but as vital threads holding the very fabric of her community together. She understood that Kael's stern demeanor often masked immense responsibility, and that his decisions, no matter how difficult, were always aimed at protecting his tribe. This shared understanding brought a quiet sense of happiness that was far more enduring than fleeting pleasures. As Elara embraced her evolving role, she became an indispensable part of the tribal fabric. Her gentle guidance, combined with her unwavering commitment to the well-being of her people, particularly inspired the younger generation of Apache women. She demonstrated through her own example that even within the confines of tradition, individual strength and purpose could flourish. A burgeoning sense of collective joy began to subtly replace the pervasive anxieties, not an exuberant delight, but a deeper contentment derived from their shared endeavors and mutual support. This fostered a different kind of wealth in their lives, not material riches, but the profound richness of community, the depth of human connection, and the unwavering resilience of their shared spirit. Elara's once hesitant voice now carried a quiet authority, valued by both elders and peers. Her remarkable journey, transforming from a scared young woman into a pillar of strength, became a powerful testament to the indomitable nature of the human spirit, illustrating how profound transformation and enduring purpose could emerge even from the most challenging circumstances.